sleeve. Every Tuesday night feels like Christmas Eve. Living between Wednesdays.
What's up, folks? I'm your host, Konrad, on Wednesday Night Reviews. And once again, we are joined by the amazing Paul Veenstra. And we're going to talk about Moonstone Issues 2, which is going on live on Kickstarter relatively soon from now. Paul, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Konrad.
Absolutely. Always. It was fantastic having you last time. And this time you have distinctly gotten a much more cool background, and I'm digging it. So we will get into that. But yes, we are here to talk about your book. So I guess just like last time, first easy question for the folks either watching live or in the future if they're going to watch it while the campaign is on. First easy question. For those who haven't seen your name, don't know your face, who is Paul Veenstra?
So I've been working at that, and Paul Veenstra, I'm a creator. I'm getting to know myself better, as we all do as we get older. My primary focus is on world building. So I just love to get entrenched in the content and to go deep, to get to know the characters, to build the settings. And I find if I put myself there, the story just, kind of writes itself. So I would say I'm a world builder who also likes to tell stories, put those two together, and that about sums it up.
I love it. And Moonstone has quite the world that you have built. One of the things that I loved about it last time was just the extreme detail that you ever so lightly touched on with background shots, the occasional scene while you were introducing the protagonists. But now we have so much more, and in the second issue, we get to see a lot more of it. I guess from a writing standpoint, and now that presumably you've been living in this world for quite a while, what's it like to get to bring readers into the proverbial castle?
Well, it's like you said, it's fantastic. We're just touching, the tip of the iceberg. And issue 1, I was like, we're giving you so little, and now we're giving you more. Like you said, there's more here. We're getting to see the castle. We're getting to see the culture of the people. The whole character cast is now introduced, which is, necessary to tell the story. We're getting to know every little character, and we're already getting to see some of their nuances. But there's just so much that's still left to be told, of course. Sage as well in the first issue. She's as you would know if you had read it, but if not, she's our female main protagonist. And in the first issue, she's blind, she's weak, she's getting kind of dragged around helplessly. And in this issue, she dons her own outfit. She stands up for what she believes in, and she really comes into her own. And because Myro is the male protagonist, he kind of sets the stage initially, but really the book, as it goes on, you'll find it shifts more to being Sage as the central figure. The conflict, let's say, really revolves around her, and it's her that needs to resolve it. So yeah, that's just a little taste of what's to come.
I love it. And I'm just actually going to pull up some of the assets from the previous interview just so that we can see Sage and Milo. I don't know how well this is going to show up, but we're going to find out. Can I zoom? Oh, it'll let me zoom it. Beautiful. I've never done this before, people. So this is a rather actiony shot of our male protagonist, who is royalty, actually. Paul, can you talk about sort of his role in the world?
Myro is the prince destined to be king. He's the eldest son of 2, and he, as a young man, he's been told he's going to be king his whole life. And so he's become to resent that identity that's been forced upon him. So Myro's a bit jaded, you could say. He's grumpy. He's in disdain. So the character, as you get to know him initially, he's a little harsh, but obviously Sage, being a beautiful girl, is going to bring out the soft side of him, if nothing else will. So that's issue 1. And issue 2, we get to see another side of Myro, his interactions with his family, how he interacts with his younger brother. Darian is the name of his younger brother. And his younger brother has a different idea of the responsibilities. As Prince, Myro feels like he'd like to hand over his responsibilities, and his brother is almost resentful of him for that. So that is the dynamic between those two. And his parents are introduced, and I don't want to go too deep into that.
Yeah.
You can gladly ask me, but the Kickstarter campaign as well actually gives a lot of info. I did a character write-up for every single character. I want you to fall in love with the characters just for reading the write-up on Kickstarter. I want you to get to know them right off the hop and be like, okay, I can hop right in now. So that's kind of the idea there.
I love it. And I'm sure that the folks out there, when they check out the campaign, they will appreciate it. That being said, if you are tuning in live, one, thank you. But also the link that you're now seeing on your screen, if you punch that in on your phone to Google, or if you're a dual monitor freak like myself, open up another window, slide it over, punch that URL in, and you can go to the Notify Me page for the campaign. Now, Paul, you've kindly sent me the not finalized, but finished copy of Moonstone issue 2. Are you quite all right if I show maybe the first 2 pages so that I can show them what Sage and Myro and maybe Darian look like? Or shall we keep that?
No, you're more than welcome to show, or if there's another page which you feel illustrates that better, I'm happy. I trust that you know what a spoiler is. So if you have a page in mind that kind of brings everyone to light, I'm happy with that.
You know what? Yeah, I'll do pages in the dockets 3 and 4, so that we can see Darian as well. And
sorry, my dog is eating my rug here. I'm just trying to keep him at bay while he...
What kind of dog is he?
He's a Belgian Shepherd. Indy, come here. Come here.
Yeah. I'll
lure him up here.
Yeah, let's see the dog. I love it.
A quick break. These are actually cat treats. I bought them from the store. I thought they were dog treats, but he likes them just fine, so they work just as well.
It's a dog treat.
I'll lure him up. And the people at home, because dog. Oh, don't knock over any of my setup here, but come over this way, bud. Come here, Indy. Up. This is my buddy. Look at the camera. Oh, that's too close.
Oh my goodness.
He's a long-haired shepherd. He's a good boy, but he likes to gnaw on our slippers, socks, and basically if he's not getting enough attention, then anyways, hopefully this will keep him at bay for now. So
well, he's a welcome third guest. If we can get him set up with his own webcam, let's do it.
Next time.
Next time. Yes, I will show that page there so we get a shot a couple of the characters. All right, so we are going to get a glance at my Gmail, but that's not a big deal. I kind of give it out anyway. So yeah, on screen here we've got Darian, the younger brother, doing his thing, and then here we can see our 2 protagonists, and a little bit quippy. I like it. I like the brotherly love, so to speak, and a little bit more.
They don't take long to get back to it. They don't waste any time.
I totally dig it. And one thing that I got curious about when I was checking it out was, given like the level of depth that you've built into this world, which again, I feel like there's way more to this, and I'm excited because it almost feels like maybe I'll reveal myself to be too young or too old here. I'm not sure anymore, but it feels like Avatar, like The Last Airbender, where the first couple episodes you're like, this is almost nothing, but it's kind of cool, and it just kind of keeps going. It feels like we're on the tip of that. But what I wanted to ask Paul was, you've built an extremely detailed world. The clothes people wear, how they act, how they move. It's all very detailed. And I was wondering, was it harder to make the physical world, the cultures and stuff, or was it harder to make the people?
Good question. Yeah, you're referring to the characters themselves versus the people of the culture, or the characters, the main characters, or
I guess the people, like everyone except the main cast. So like all our background characters, but even to the extent of like how the culture works, their belief system. Because like I'm a guy who loves architecture, right? So like building or not building, but thinking of buildings all day long, love it. People, other than doing this, people kind of scare me. So like, what did you find maybe challenging about it, and what was harder?
Well, that's an interesting question. Like it's a building process, and it builds slowly over time. Inspirations led to developments, and my artists, my team, took my inspirations and put their own unique twist. So they would say to me, we may have discussed this in the previous interview, but they would say, what were your inspirations for that outfit? And they would try to get to the root of what I thought was unique about it. For instance, I sent him a picture of a Namib guard, and it was the flowing cloth and the saber, and I just thought it was cross-cultural. So the mix of African and Middle Eastern, and even a hint of European, which is what my vision was. So it's a matter of going on Google, finding what meets your vision, then artistically redefining it, in its own light. So the castle as well, it's based off of a real castle in Ethiopia.
Oh, cool.
And I was fortunate enough to have a very detailed 3D mapping done of it. And it's a project that was already online. So the castle itself was mapped out by a UNESCO organization. So I went in every square inch of it, and that's how I made some of the rooms, the castle, the designs. It was my exploration of this castle without even having to leave the comfort of my home. So welcome to the 21st century. I think there's pluses and negatives to the age we live in. But for me personally, I couldn't do these things. Artistically, I may have the vision, but when it comes to pen and paper, I can draw, but I can't get it quite on paper what I'm seeing. And that's where the internet and all these extra tools come into play. So the people, on the other hand, it's a similar idea. You have the vision, and then through searching and exploration, you take little pieces. I like this from this guy, that from that guy. Let's put them all together. That kind of thing.
Talking about taking pieces and things from people that you like, I love asking this question, especially because in this book where we have so many background characters, it'd be easy. Is there anyone, like, is there friends or family that you've just like sort of placed in there where if they get the book and read it, they'll be like, wait a minute, isn't that?
That's a funny one that you mention it, and I shouldn't even really be saying it. I think my wife might be upstairs watching this live interview, but I always tell her that Sage is based off her, and
that's lovely.
Yeah, well, there's some very flattering images of her in the comic, but I mean, to be honest, the characters are all unique, and the artists put their own spin on them. The truth be told, there might be characteristics, more so the characteristics of characters that I think are the people around me or my own self, rather than the physical appearance, because my physical appearance is based on the environment that they've grown up in and the culture. So the culture, it's kind of, so I've mentioned Middle Eastern, African, European. Africa, I find fascinating. I think it's got a very deep history. I was fortunate enough to travel to Morocco, and I got some interesting fossils. But I think Africa in general, and South Africa, the the history, the rocks, the ancient nature of this continent.
Mhm.
And the people have a rich, deep culture. I mean, it's a cradle of civilization.
Literally.
So there's a colonial element, and you'll notice like the characters are of mixed race throughout the castle. And I don't even think I even really properly addressed that in my story. I've got almost 100 pages of script written for these 10 issues I'm planning to release, but the colonial element is like a historical element that like never really made it into the comic, and maybe will be, there's certain characters that have a deeper understanding of these origins that maybe I'll get them to drop a few lines, but it's more hinting in what forth. So yeah, so in long story short, not physically but characteristically, yes. That to that question.
That's so cool. Like I think that's a beautiful and wonderful tribute um, to in some capacity immortalize the ones we love.
Yeah.
Just hands down, that's cool. Like it just is. And also when it comes to designing the cultures, actually I'm going to show one more shot here. This is
Of course.
it's the opening page, so I'm sure it's probably going to make it into the Kickstarter page anyway. But just to see like the level of detail, the structures that are in this place, it just it feels lived in, vibrant, and yet very much so like ancient. It's just such a cool feeling. It's fantasy all the way, and it's something I enjoy, Paul, about this little world that you've created for us to enjoy.
Well, thank you so much. And this page too resonated with me when I first saw it. I was like, yeah, that's Moonstone right there. It's got a timeless nature, like you said. It's got a multicultural, and you know, you can't quite put your finger on it. There's also a bit of a gritty element, which is what I wanted Moonstone to feel. It's not fantasy. Everything's clean and perfect, like a perfectly polished stone. It's an old, you know, and that's to the characters as well, reflected in the characters as I'm sure you know after reading the digital copy, the king and queen, you know, their relationship is also symbolic of the decay of the kingdom itself.
Absolutely. I guess we're at about the 18-minute mark, so we're right around what I like to ask. Now, I appreciate. We have a wonderful comment. Daniel, thank you kindly. He says, "What an opening page! Looks great."
Thanks, Daniel.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, thank you so much, Daniel. I guess, like I said, yeah, we're 18 minutes in. So now, while the Kickstarter's not live, it goes live on October 1st, correct?
That's correct.
Beautiful. Again, one of the big hurdles that, you know, if someone's watching this who has never backed a Kickstarter before, one of the big hurdles that comes up, and I hear about the qualms and the anxieties is, well, what if it doesn't get made? What if the book never gets made and I never get my book? Well, first and foremost, I can vouch. I am looking at the 39-page comic with the promotional purposes only banner on it on the front and back, which is a nice touch. I dig it. So the book's done. I guess my question there, Paul, is, and maybe for the folks who are getting into doing Kickstarters and they're thinking of making their own comics, did Moonstone's first issues, wow, that is a weird sentence. Did the first Kickstarter for the first issue of Moonstone help pay for the creation of this comic? Or is that just something you've saved up for?
Yeah, so I did a ton of research on Kickstarter, and when I started creating Moonstone, I had no idea that I would go this route. I thought of getting picked up by a publisher, or you know, I thought it would be that great. A dose of reality would then follow. Like any, you know, the media realm is a very hard nut to crack for any industry. Comics might be one of the better or easier ones out there. Doesn't make it easy though. It's about who you are, and obviously you need to have. So it's like the catch-22, of course. You need to have it, do it, and if you haven't done it, then you don't have it. So I started making Moonstone as a passion project, funded, of course, personally. And issue 1 was fully funded. It was pretty well complete when we launched our first Kickstarter. And I learned a lot about the fulfillment element of it. I mean, I made good. I got $4,200 Canadian.
Awesome.
So that sounds great. Yeah, and I got 100 backers. I think I sold 100 physical comics. I think there were 150 or so total backers. But then there are people who buy the 3 cover editions and whatnot have you. So it added up to about 100 comics. And I know a lot of people say the fulfillment is a scary part of the process, but I truly enjoyed it. I really felt like I was I put a lot of special care, and I thought of, what can I do next time to really create a unique experience for people? Like, I really want people to think of Moonstone as an experience. With that being said, I ordered the comics from the United States, so I'm based in Canada, which is probably my biggest hindrance as in business in general, because the tax man in Canada, he's on in everyone's pocket. So, and the duty I paid almost $1,000 in duty to get the comics to me, and then I ended up having to ship them all back to the United States. So
for your backers, yeah.
So to answer your question, no, I didn't. I made a little bit of money when it was all the dust settled. That amount of money was not nearly enough to cover even a quarter of the next issue, because the next issue had to also be paid out of my pocket. So my goal going forward is to break even. That would be the first, step. But I've also thought about, so there's outsourcing fulfillment for those who haven't used Kickstarter. There's fulfillment people out there that, like, for instance, Comics Wellspring, they'll do your comic, they'll print it, and they'll fulfill your comic. So they'll send it to those places, and they'll just charge you the shipping. It's keeping it in the United States for us Canadians. I thought about going that route, but I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to take another crack at the fulfillment. I just enjoyed it too much, and I want to put the personal touch on everyone. I found a better shipping option. I found a better comic printer. Not that Comics Wellspring wasn't good, but I found one in Canada. So the duty is going to be cut down. Yeah. So
hell yeah.
This is the learning experience that I have undergone. And but what my advice would be to anyone who's thinking about writing a comic or starting a Kickstarter, my advice would be to make the comic, or at least produce half of it. The artwork can be used in the campaign. I recycle a lot of the artwork for the campaign. It helps to sell it if you write right in there. And I know on your first one, people have a harder time believing you. But if you say it's 50% done, or you could even show Tyler James, who does Kickstarter crash courses, he recommended that you put little thumbnails to indicate that you finished it, so people can see it. They can't download it or steal it. I mean, these are just ideas. If you're trying to build trust, there's ways around this. So yeah, but I would recommend trying to do at least half or all for your first comic. And don't go too crazy. Like, don't do what I did and spend 2 or 3 years making your first comic. Like, it can be made in 6 months. You shouldn't have to wait 3 years to make one issue. But now I've made it all, so it's going pretty smoothly, So I've done a lot of that groundwork.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, the reason I asked that question too is for anyone out there watching, listening, who wants to do it. I like, as someone who consumes a lot of comics, there's kind of a mystique about how this all happens, and no one really talks about it unless you go after people who are like, here's how to do Kickstarter, right? And a normal consumer just won't. So I like to sort of flesh it out, shine a light on it, because there's a lot of ways that this can go down. And in my own experience doing what I do and interviewing, God, I think I'm over like 100 different creators now. I find more often than not, campaigns that have at least half the book, if not the book done, they tend to do better. For many reasons. One, financially, it means you don't have to worry about that part of it. You can just worry about printing and shipping and that whole thing, which the fact that you liked that part That's a standout thing. A lot of people dread that. The fact that you were like, "Oh, it was great," I'm like, "Okay, well, Paul's
It
got
would
his.
work.
He's set."
It would still work. I felt like Santa Claus sending out presents to all the boys and girls, and I put a personal touch on every one. And I thought, how can I do it later? Like if I had 1,000 backers, it wouldn't be feasible. With 100, it's not too bad. A few nights, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's special. I want them to feel like I put the same amount of care in as they put into me. So for now, until I get 1,000 backers, I'll continue this.
Funny story about that, actually. But another team I interviewed, Mad Quill Comics, they make a book called Bestiary, which is really cool. It's about like early days of Canada. But the artist was like, yeah, for every backer that gets to a certain level, he's like, I'll do a sketch card. It was like this big, but he'll do some sort of monster. And then exactly what you said just happened. He got too many backers, and he was like, I did it. It was a lot of work, and they're gonna love it. But like, oh my god. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting process. So, Paul, an important question. I like to ask at least the minimum. So if someone is watching who's never touched Moonstone before, your campaign is for issues 1 and 2. I'm actually going to show the... oh, did it flip for me? Oh, it did. So this is the Notify Me page. Again, links on the screen now. Punch that in. Come see the page. Click this button. Get notified. When it goes live, you can back it. You've already got 58. That's awesome.
Yeah, that and a lot of those were the previous backers.
Yes.
I put a little pamphlet in the mail with a QR code, and I already had this next campaign in pre-launch when I sent the rewards out. And I noticed like within the course of a few days, my backers went from like 0 to like 30 or 40. So most of them were my previous backers. And I think that's obvious. It's about building that relationship, building fans. And that's why I'm doing this, so that I can build a fan base and give them, feed their appetite for more Moonstone.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, I flashed it up earlier, but EJOV says they cannot wait for issue number 2, which I love.
Well, it's coming.
So yes, the question itself, for folks who've maybe never touched any of it, for 1 and 2, what is sort of the minimum buy-in, so to speak, to get the first 2 issues, and then what's like one of your higher end ones?
I'm still working out the nuts and bolts of the campaign. So in my first campaign, it was $16 Canadian, which what is that? $13 American, maybe 12, $13 American.
12 or 13, yeah.
So you're getting the comic physical, you're getting a signed art print, you're getting the digital comic and a number of digital pieces of artwork, backgrounds, and what have you. So that would be the 16 or 12 US dollar mark. So my next campaign will be something similar. You're going to get issue 2 for around the same amount of money. You're going to get a bonus object. I think it's going to be a poster this time.
Cool.
A small, it's not, I think 11 by 8. So a little, it's a little poster, promotion poster. I'll probably sign them all too. You'll get the poster. You'll get the comic. You get all the digital rewards, which will include the past issue digitally. And I haven't thought about whether I'm going to just leave issue 1 as an add-on, because if people want the cover variants for issue 2, or if they want the 3-pack of the 3 different variants of issue 2, I think I might just leave issue 1 at a low-cost add-on. For instance, I was toying with some numbers like $6 or $7 Canadian, so it'd be like $5 American. You can throw on issue 1 physical if you're buying issue 2 already or in any capacity. So that's kind of how I thought I'd integrate issue 1 into the equation, because my returning people or people who bought or who have seen the digital version may not be interested in the issue 1, and I don't want to pollute my reward tiers with this issue 1, issue 2, issue 2, issue 2, 1. It's like I want to keep it simple. So going up then. So I've got some higher tiers, and I'm thinking about how to make it more cost effective for the backers. So I've got a bit of experience, like in terms of shipping. I put a blanket shipping cost of 30 Canadian dollars for the last campaign. And I think that was a little excessive because in Europe, it's like more like $20 to ship there. But in the UK, which is odd, is 30. So in Australia would be more like 30. So I'm thinking I'll do EU, probably $20 Canadian shipping. Whereas UK and Australia, for some reason, to get it into the UK is an extra. It's just silly like that. But that's what I discovered upon doing a campaign. So a higher tier, which is sitting around the 100 and something, 100, let's say 120 for argument's sake. You're going to get a Moonstone poster. Got one framed right here. And I'll sign that for you. This one isn't signed. I don't get the signed one, unfortunately. You get yourself a Moonstone t-shirt. So to your size, of course, small to 3XL. And I'll throw some other goodies in there, of course. Probably a sticker set, the poster as well, all the other rewards, and a few extras. I'm thinking of the little goodies, and of course stretch goals may get thrown in there too. I got some cool stretch goals in mind as well. So that's about the 120, 130 mark plus shipping.
Awesome.
Yeah, so something like that.
I'm also because I happen to have it beside me. Your followers on the campaign have gone up since the interview started, which is wonderful to see. I'm wondering if we can't crest 60 because you're at 59 now.
Oof, so close.
It's right there. And I think it's fantastic, one, that you've got so many returning backers. I'm super curious because, like, when I tend to think of fantasy, I think of readers probably in, like, North America who are, Lord of the Rings fans, or maybe Europe. But you named quite a few countries there. So I got to ask, like, what kind of global response have you had? Like, did you have anywhere? Did you have to send any books somewhere where you were like, what?
I don't think we made it out of. I think we sent one to Germany, one to France, and one to UK. And I can kind of. Thanks, Daniel. You're the man.
Awesome.
So I didn't get a huge global, and I think only one went to Canada, and then all the rest went right to the States. So, and the crazy thing is, it was more expensive for me to ship my comic via Canada Post, which, if you're not Canadian, you don't know the frustrations we have with Canada Post. But it was more money for me to ship it to this one Canadian than it was to ship it to someone in California, in the States. It's like, so I did find a new shipping service. Oh, good. There's a few out there, and it's going to shave a few bucks off the top. Hopefully, anyways, or at the very least, for my international shipping will be better, or hopefully within Canada will be hopefully a little better. But no, I didn't have any crazy, not too much international. I do work with a few artists from all over the world. They didn't really purchase. I sent them to them for free. So my artists are in Europe, and I've worked with people in Asia as well and whatnot, but haven't sent a comic there yet.
Okay. I didn't ask because the art's the same. I believe you've maintained the same artist, correct?
We will be keeping the same artist right through the series. The artists are dedicated to the team, and we'll get the 10 issues out, and then they're gonna have to. Then we'll renegotiate the contract and see if Moonstone can just keep on going. But we'll get at least this act concluded.
I dig it. John Lee,
this
wonderful.
Is my artist here.
One was mine. Speaking of owls, I think only letters from Hogwarts are delivered faster. I love it.
Thanks, John.
Awesome. Wow, I had a question and it totally just left my brain. That's okay. These things happen. Paul, I guess what was different for you writing issue two, what was different about writing it? And then when you were getting the pages back from the artists, was there anything different about that process now that you've done a full issue with them? How did you things changed?
Well, no one's perfect, and I could be better in some respects, but one thing I notice is my artists have improved.
Oh.
He's being more. He's using elements, we'll say, in the pages, and you'll know what I'm referring to in the action sequences. We're getting some really cool scene compositions, just really unique. I think even the artwork is even just a little better. Like they're getting to know the characters, the nuances. They're refining their own techniques. So I would say for sure you can expect a higher quality full product. From my perspective, the issue one is fairly light on text. It's visual. It's a lot of settings. It's really quite light in terms of in comparison to other comics. Issue two, I wouldn't say is heavy on text by any stretch, but I've definitely put a lot more in there, and there was a lot more time on my behalf spent combing through the text on every line, making sure every line was witty and get the right message across. So that would be my input. Would be the text for sure. The speech and the dialogue was more in depth or what have you.
All right, I like it. I always find that question interesting because obviously as time goes on, you're working more and more with your team. You're sort of fine tuning what works. And sometimes I've had artists turn around and go, yeah, I've actually completely changed how I do what I do so that my artist can work a little differently. Or, yeah, actually the artist totally reinvented the way that they think about composition, and it was a whole. So it's kind of a cool question to ask.
So yeah, I mean, I can tell you briefly how the process works. I wrote the whole script. I sent it to them upon our initial, when the contract and our initial introduction. I sent them the entire script. So they were familiar with the concept from the very first day, and then now they had an idea of where it was headed. And then what I do then is I break down the scenes and I rewrite the script. I don't rewrite it from scratch, but I tweak each issue I'll rewrite, prior to them commencing.
Okay.
And then I'll send them the script again. And then they'll send me the rough storyboards. So it's a very rough outline of what he envisions. And then I'll go back and I'll provide him with feedback based on what I can see. And then that's pretty well the issue planned out. And then as we go through and as the pages get concluded, we do it scene by scene. Then I will provide additional feedback once the line work and more details have been placed. And, it's just a continual back and forth. The goal is that most of it's figured out. It's the small little details like, oh, I know, could you do this little thing here or that little thing there? I'm just like, I want to have to say something to them. I can't just say everything is perfect.
Absolutely. But I guess my question is, Paul, to my knowledge, this is your first comic series, correct?
My first series. I created a comic in 2016 and it was a one-off comic. And then after that, I went back into into film again. And then, so this is my rebirth into the comic world. And it's my first real series and my first real major project, actually. It's scaled bigger than anything I've done before.
Fascinating. Because the way that you've described your workflow is so understandable and simple, right? it feels like you've done this a lot, and you're just like, yeah, this is just sort of how the workflow goes. It's really easy. We just, we send it, we get a little revision, we in that way we know what we're doing. And it's like I've heard so many stories of just like absolute chaos, and you're like, oh yeah, it was just, and we're done, and it's great, no problem.
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, 3 years of pre-production will do that to you,
Fair.
and finding the right people for the project, and not rewriting the story halfway through. I changed the dialogue, but like a lot of the time the page is done and I'm like, we can change this dialogue here, and so yeah, I can understand how it can be chaotic. I've also created a lot of other media projects, and my other comic, which I made previously. I'm familiar with the process of working with contractors and the feedback cycle, and I understand it's best that they have the best idea first, because if they're just guessing, it's going to be a lot of time wasted and a lot of money spent. But if they have the perfect idea, so I provided him with all the backgrounds, all the settings, all the characters, all the script, it really isn't, it's not guesswork, at that point.
Let's just get to work.
That's right. Let's do her.
Love it. That's so cool. Then another question that's come to mind for me, and I'm going to show I'm not sure which cover it is. I have a feeling it's the B cover. So on the one of the major characters from the first issue, I guess not major characters, but one of the major symbols that we see a lot is the owl from the first issue. Who or what is this wonderful avian creature?
So as you might notice, and I don't want to be too spoiler heavy, but the owl is not as a major character in the second issue, and that's to say there were some events that happened in the first issue that scared her pretty good, and she'll be back, don't worry. But
okay,
so
good.
This creature, so in issue 1 and in issue 2, the emergence of the black ravens is quite apparent. So that is the amalgamation of the main antagonist's eye and the black raven, and both are symbols of death. The black raven has always been a symbol of death, and the moon. It's basically the unflinching eye of time and the powerlessness of mortality and what have you. So the raven is reoccurrent, and as the story goes, the raven as a symbol might take on a new form. For instance, it's very heavy in the first few issues, but anyways, you'll see.
Yeah, there's 10 of these. Well, there's 8 more coming. There's 10 of them total. Yeah, no spoilers. If folks want to know more, they can, again, absolutely punch that link in on screen. Go check out the campaign. Get yourself notified. All that good stuff. Now, one thing that sort of came to mind for me, Paul, was in our last interview, you talked a lot about the symbology of the moon, the moonstone, and the meaning that had. Now, one thing that maybe some folks aren't aware of, when creating a comic, the writing chunk of it tends to happen a lot faster than the art chunk of it. So writers like yourself will have finished scripts a number of issues in advance, like yourself, and then the art starts coming in and issue 1 gets made, and now issue 2 will get made. I'm wondering if between initial pen to paper, so to speak, I'm rather positive you typed it, but from initial pen to paper to the creation of campaign for issue 2 here, has the meaning within the story of the moon, the moonstone, has that changed for you in your perspective, or have you thought more and changed more about it?
That's a great question. It certainly did in the first, as the first issue might have come to light.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that because, like I mentioned, it was a long pre-production process. The elements are all there. I guess it's not necessarily those those intrinsic elements, like the deeper elements, are like not changing, but it's how I manifest them in the story. So I'm seeing it bubbling up in new forms. So it's not necessarily that there's any fundamentals changing, but it's more like maybe I'm getting to know characters deeper. I'm rounding out characters that initially I had a vague idea of, or I thought I had a great idea, but I'm getting to know them as real people. And I'm seeing these the symbols appearing, or the metaphors, or what have you, appearing in the manners in which, you know, my artists are as well interpreting, and they're building things. And a lot of the time I'll catch them, and sometimes they'll say, oh, did you see this and this? Or I'll catch it down the road and I'll be like, hey, I noticed something weird, like, what's this? And they're like, yes, that was my plan all along. And I'm like, so I hope I'm catching most of it, but you know, so it goes back and forth. Or other times I might have ideas of my own that I'll have to communicate to them. So that's really so the idea is quite well entrenched. The Moonstone is about time. Time is an element of the story. The time. So there's a deep history here, way back. Anyways, spoiler alert.
I was gonna say I love this stuff, but yeah, like. Please do. If you want to keep going, go for it. I will not stop you. I love this stuff.
Well, maybe Konrad, me and you can have a private one later, you know, and I'll give you the whole thing.
I don't know. See, I genuinely don't know if I would like that, because I'm excited to see it as it comes, and I think there is something that your artists bring to the table that when they flush out your writing and they really make it pop, and specifically like the way that they do shadows on the bodies, I love it. But that, I don't know, something about that pops. So I think I'd like to wait for that.
Yeah, and then the
like
story
the
unfolding is something better than the story being heard. Unfolding is so real, and you're there, right? So no, that was I shouldn't have even said such a foolish thing.
Well, it was a very kind offer. So I guess one question that it's kind of been scratching the back of my mind for about 20 minutes now is you've got issue 2 done. You've got scripting for all 10 done. In actuality, has issue 3 started production?
Issue 3 has started in some manners, but it's still like we're kind of we're shutting down, you know, after issue 2 right now. But I think before the campaign concludes, I will be seeing artwork for issue 3. So you can, yeah, so it'll be in production, but we're kind of like decompressing from issue 2 right now.
Fair.
So, but issue 3, so I've already got an idea of March in mind. I was thinking of coinciding it with the Toronto Comic-Con. So yeah, I might see you there. I was thinking of actually running the campaign during the Comic-Con and then going there and maybe doing some in-person promotion. I don't think I'll get a table or anything, but maybe I'll dress up or something. We'll see, but at least I'll go and make a presence there. So I was thinking March would be a good time. I've gauged how long it took us between issue 1 and issue 2. So now I can say realistically where we'll be for issue 3, and March looks like a safe date.
Nice. Well, you know what? I did a panel at Comic-Con in March. I did one at Fan Expo in October. We're in September. And I will definitely be applying to do one in March. So maybe if I can find yourself and 2 others, I can apply to do a panel to be like, hey, let's just sponsor these upcoming campaigns.
Oh, boy.
We'll think of something. We'll talk. I'll get in touch with the folks at Fan Expo and the company that runs it, and we might have some fun.
I like the sounds of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to hear it, John. Issue 3 is already in my head.
I might have irked him a little bit. Well, I shouldn't have. Yeah. It's real already, but it's all in his head. It's already done, but it's just done in his head. So it's not
Now it's just time to sit
done in
down
my
and-
head. We need it done in exactly.
That's fantastic. Now, I was actually, I like to ask is, as you're now a comics creator, that is just something you are. One question that I haven't asked in a while in my interviews, but I think I'm going to bring it back for you, Paul, is when you think of yourself now, have you hit the point yet where you're Paul comic book creator, or are you still Paul, whatever your day job is, filmmaker? Or
I wish I could make money making films, to be perfectly honest, but nobody makes money making films either. But I appreciate the. Yeah, I mean, I guess so in some respects. I guess when your peers recognize you, being up on that panel would certainly help a bit. It's. I guess the peer recognition is something I've been looking for. I mean, I don't need it, but it would be nice. But the fans' recognition is all I really need. And having those backers that did campaign one, they didn't even know me. They went out on a limb. Some people gave me fairly heavy rewards, like $200 for the full package. I thought that was incredible that they saw the vision and they believed in that, and that meant everything to me. So I guess yes, I guess in that sense, I do feel like a comic book creator from that experience. But I guess I'm so caught up on what I could do better or what I can strive for next. I kind of don't, but maybe you're right. I need to stop and think about what I've accomplished so far before I get too enraptured by what's, ahead.
Well, you know what? I'll share two things with you then. So one, and I appreciate the advice might not be one-to-one translation here, but one thing that I was on a panel with, I wasn't on a panel, I was in the crowd. I was watching this panel, and Greg Capullo was on there, and someone asked him about his old art. And one of the cool things that he said was, because they asked him about like Spawn #1 or the early Spawn issues he did back in like '93. And he's like, I honestly don't even recognize that artist anymore because I constantly add and change stuff in my approach to making art. So, Paul, for you, what I will say is absolutely keep looking forward. All of these little edits that you're doing as the new issues come out, they will make you a better writer. You'll hone in your vision so that what we end up getting as readers will be like probably every time, every panel, every page, it'll be like a minutia closer to your actual brain. But like by the end of issue 10, it'll probably be word for word, panel for panel, exactly what you're thinking of. So keep going.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I wanted to share with you, Paul, is regarding sort of what you said near the beginning of the interview about hoping to get picked up to have this be created. I actually have to count this. 4 times now, I have seen creators who were just like yourself, indie folks, kickstarting their own books, having a go of it, getting some solid core followers and loving the life, get picked up by companies because after 3 or 4 issues, it was very clear that they were going to get to 6 issues, which is typically, a graphic novel, or in your case, 10, which is even better. But having that first couple is definitely, like you said, the catch-22 of, you have to have the thing to prove you can do the thing before they'll let you do the thing. And it's like, but the way you're going, give it 2 more issues and then maybe, hey, Image, hey, Scout, hey, AWA, hey, Aftershock, actually, I think probably be pretty cool. So go for it, Paul.
Well, thank you. And I've noticed too, publishers have their styles, and they want something that fits into their catalog.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen and I've noticed, like I'm not going to pitch to ones that their style is more traditional. Like my style is a little, it's harder to describe, but some kind of realistic, I don't know, that we have to think of a name for this style. Anyways, maybe John knows what this style's called. But so yeah, like I want to get the right fit, and I would rather continue like this, build a community, get one-on-one with my fans, get to know them, and really feel like, you know, then have a faceless relationship with the publisher who steals half the money. Even if I was making more, but I wasn't able to connect with the fans, I think I just prefer this. And I think that's the takeaway here, and that's the message for other creators, is that the Kickstarter route, and I was maybe going to say this for later in our interview, but here we go. Kickstarter is an amazing platform, and not just Kickstarter, but the whole crowdfunding world. It's really, I think it's really the golden age of indie comics. There's very little censorship. Well, pretty well none. If you go on Kickstarter, there's pretty well pornography on there and violence like you wouldn't believe. And you know what? That suits some needs because those things are getting funded. So it's like you're free. So there's zero censorship. So you don't have anyone else telling you what. So your vision is absolute as the creator. If you have the money to create the comic, or you have a small team, you can do whatever you want and you can sell it. You can make a little bit of money, but it's not about the money. It's about making the comic. So I just want to say, like, I think we're all going to look back on this era, because it won't last forever, and say this was like the golden age of indie comics. And I feel like, me personally, I'm a little late to the party. Like I'm like 2 a.m. here to the party. So there's still like a few hours before sunlight comes up. And, you know, sometimes it's the craziest partiers of all that come, you know, the 2 a.m. guys are some of the best partiers. So I feel like I'm late to the party, but the party's still happening. So yeah, so that's just a message of, I think, of inspiration for everyone that wants to make comics out there.
I love it. And you know what? We're at the 57.5 minutes here, so we got 2.5 minutes left. I think it's a great spot to end the serious talk on, because it's true. I think you're right. I've never heard anyone say it like that, and that feels correct. So Paul, with our 2.5 minutes left, I'll ask you sort of my last two questions. John has come in with our style is Moonstone style. I like it.
Yeah.
And Daniel has quickly popped in with, thanks, Konrad. Good luck, Paul and John. I'll keep an eye out. Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks, Dan.
So classically, I end my interviews with the same two questions, just because it's consistent, it's fun, and it's pretty easy. So just to start with, Paul, when you're not doing your day job, when you're not, you know, doing shows like mine to help promote your book, which I appreciate is its own job, what are you reading? Whether it's comics, actual books, podcasts, audiobooks, what's scratching your brain?
So, like I said before, Kickstarter is amazing. I've got lots of comics from publishers, lots of really amazing comics, but my main focus now has been supporting those other creators. And, you know, sometimes if I find like I'm not really into the comic, I might just get the digital version just to support. But there are some amazing creators out there, and I'll just quickly grab this comic real quick here.
Also, folks watching, he has so many cool things on that wall.
Yeah, we've got, as you can tell, I like Star Wars and Kubrick. Cool. These are film cells here. Actually, Konrad, I had a couple of them last time.
Yeah.
And I had to dig. I was digging for the others so I could get them all up for this interview because they were stored away somewhere. So I there's a creator in he's from Montreal, so he's a Canadian as well. And the comic is Death Transit Trafalgar. It's Carl Kirsch, and he was inspirational for me. He launched this campaign about a month or two before my first campaign. And I just loved his campaign. And not to be like, I based a lot of my campaign off of his because I thought it was just so great. Now I'm making my campaign my own, but I would recommend him or other Kickstarter creators.
All right. And one thing that I will say for folks at home, they won't need it yet for your campaign, because on October 1st they can go get just back your book. But one cool thing, because I've looked up Death Transit. So if someone, knowing their taste, if they're piqued in your book and they want your book, they can actually Google that. They can find the book and they can get it right there. So feel free, people, go get good get good books, support indie comics. I love it. And Paul, my last question for you, which maybe has an answer already, but who do you think I should interview next?
Well, if you could get Carl Kirsch there, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, but he's Montreal. He's a Canadian, and he's quite popular. He's got a big following. His campaign did pretty well, 60-some thousand, and his rewards were really nice. And the comic was not very long, but it had a good character depth, and I found it to be really well done and produced. So, I mean, he would be a good guy. There's lots of amazing indie creators, and I'm just starting to delve into it. I'm amazed at what I see on Kickstarter on a daily basis. So I wish I could back them all, but I still have to save some money for my comic.
Right? Well, then, absolutely, Paul. I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show, talk to me about Moonstone tonight.
Well, thank you, Konrad. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Glad to hear it. And for the folks at home, once again, up on your screen, type that link in to Google. Go find Moonstone issues 1 and 2. You can back it. Well, you can hit notify me now. October 1st, it'll go live. And then sometime soon after that, you'll have your book. And oh, yes, Paul?
Well, I see we're still at 59, but we'll get there.
We'll get there. We'll get to 60.
We'll get there.
Not to worry. And of course, for the folks at home, thank you for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe for more, and we will see you next time. Adios.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day. Yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns. Can't find issue 2. Collect a